Malaak Shabazz, the youngest of Dr. Betty Shabazz and Malcolm X. I was in a film, a documentary by Thomas Muhammad titled Malcolm X and His Overwhelming Influence on the Black Power Movement. I always knew about his importance, but a lot of the mainstream didn't know, and I think this documentary is finally showing my father's image more correctly than whitewashed, melon-challenged media. How they paraphrase, they give their spin on it, and so this shows a bit more accuracy and makes the interest in him even more. Uh, these days, we have the internet, so there's no excuse for not to finding out information. Unfortunately, when it's on a lot of television or TV shows, they paraphrase and give their spin on it instead of giving the actual history. And that's what this documentary does. It shows people who have been here, been with him throughout his life, throughout my life anyway, uh, and gives the accurate assessment of him. There were people in the shadows who were there to support but didn't have to be on television like some of these people do now. They want to be out there when they're not really the subject. And these people were supportive throughout my childhood, throughout my sisters, my mother's travel, my father's travels. They arranged things for him, especially after leaving the nation. He had a small group, but he had a very strong, powerful group. And I do want to say that between him, Martin, and my father and Martin Luther King, if you look at a triangle, Martin on the right, my father on the left, and they're trying to get to this point. But everybody in the middle was supporting them both. So the depiction of them not getting along, despising each other, and they never met, that was white propaganda. It was they never even met. And when they were finally about to meet, they had the same supporters, so they couldn't hate each other. My father was either in Africa or Martin was in jail. That's why their schedules, they were so committed to the African diaspora, the black community, that they had different ways of going about getting to the same point. And they finally met at Congress when they were signing the Civil Rights Act. And my father, they really did not want him going to the United Nations to accuse the United States under Lyndon Johnson of violating the human rights of 22 million black people and not being able to protect their lives or their interests. And so because traveling to Africa quite a bit and making his Hajj, in the United Nations, which I work now as an international human rights activist, apple doesn't fall far from the tree. He had 8 countries that supported him. You have to be brought into a member country, and he had 8, which terrified Hoover. And 8 days after, he would have been speaking to the United Nations. However, that never happened. However, at Congress, he went in, spoke to Congress, and they told him to go out the back door. And he was like, I'm not going out the back door, I'm going out the way I came. And he bumped into Martin. They both didn't know they were there. And the unfortunate thing is, when they first saw each other, they were like, hey, homeboy, what's up, pound, pound. Like, wow, it's about time. We finally bump into each other. Very looking dapper and lovely. And Martin was now going to speak to Congress. And a junior reporter was taking pictures and saw them first and started taking pictures of them embracing each other and showing an admiration for each other. And when the senior reporters saw it, they turned around, and everybody knows that picture of them posing. That was a senior reporter. They never allowed those other pictures to show the candidness and the humanity of them both and the friendliness. But those pictures exist. Those were taken first. But at least you could see their smile in them holding hands, shaking hands. It was genuine, because they were trying to control themselves because they were grinning. They were like, it's about time. And then, they parted and continued what they had to do. And when Martin was in jail, they wouldn't let my father see him because they were afraid. He could see any other visitors, but they banned my father. They did not want them speaking. So they finally spoke, and when he spoke in Selma, the students wanted him to speak, but they got Coretta to be the keynote speaker, even though he spoke. Now, Coretta's a good speaker, but she can't really speak after my father. But she's a good speaker. She's a very good speaker. She just doesn't have that same charisma as he did. But she can speak very well. They didn't really talk about Medgar in this one, but the three of them, Medgar, Martin, and Mountain, we were all connected as children. Medgar Evers' oldest daughter is my mother's goddaughter, Rena. Attila, my eldest sister, Ambassador Shabazz, and Yolanda King had a theater company for 15 years and traveled together and were lecturing together. Malaak and I were novelties because we were the twins. They just put us in the same clothes and traipsed us everywhere. But merely Coretta and my mother were going to go on the road. They were booked for 2 years, an international tour titled The Wives of the Three M's, Malcolm, Medgar, and Martin. And unfortunately, my mother died in a horrible accident. And Auntie Coretta and Marilee said, we can't do this without her. And so they canceled. But can you imagine how profound that would be? The wives of these three men getting it really the accurate information from them, not propaganda, media, even some black news, whatever. These are the wives, the mother of their children, their partners, trying to hold the, they had the boss in the house while their husbands went out to save humanity. Well, they were taking care of the kids, and then the other community wives' kids, they organized that. My father was self-taught, but not really, because he was raised that way by his parents, and his brothers and sisters all were educated, all his businesses. He veered off a little, but came back to the fold, because he knew where he came from, as well as my mother. He knew who he was marrying. She's brilliant and committed to family, health, and education.